Coach Kai? Thanks for having
It's actually K. It's one of those things. No
me up.
problem.
Um, like Cobra Kai or something.
All
Yeah.
right. So
Good.
we start again.
Okay. Take two.
Take two in good Hollywood fashion, huh? You know that I've had engineers on the show, human resources personnel, an artist, teachers, right? And different people from different careers. And I'm very glad now that for the first time on Navigating Careers, we have an actor on board. And I think it would be best if I give him the floor to introduce himself better. I don't want to mess this up. So, Sean, could you give us the honor of talking about yourself a little bit? Thank you.
Absolutely, no problem. Thank you so much for having me on, Kay. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic of navigating your career. I grew up as an actor here in Hollywood, California, Los Angeles, and I'm half Filipino. My mom is Filipino from Manila, and my dad is English, Swiss, German, Irish, Scottish. So I'm kind of a little bit of a mix.
Okay.
And growing up here in California, I worked on different things. I started off with commercials and print work, and then when I got a little older, I did some like TV and film and the movie Aquila and the Bee, To Save a Life, Hard Flip, and I mean a bunch of different stuff growing up. A lot of voiceovers. I did a lot of different things as an actor, and I really enjoyed my career when I was growing up, and I'm very proud of the work I got to do, and it's been a blast. I've been very very blessed, and it's also given me opportunities to do many other different things
Yeah.
within the entertainment industry, not just acting, as well as public speaking. And I've
Right.
moved into that territory a lot of different things. So even hosting, and I was a judge for Miss World Philippines. Or sorry, Miss World Philippines. Yeah, 2019 last year. So
Got it.
yeah.
Interesting. Interesting, Sean. I was wondering, was acting one of those things that you really wanted to do as a child? How did you get into that?
Yeah. So long story short, my brother started doing some acting stuff. My mom put him in acting classes, and I, being the younger brother, about 4.5 years younger than him, I was probably around 6 or something like that. I saw him doing acting classes and doing these things, and I always, being the younger brother, wanted to follow in his footsteps,
Right.
do whatever he was doing. If he's going off a bike jump, I'm going off a bike jump. If he's playing video games, I'm playing video games. So I always followed in his footsteps, so I jumped in and started doing it. He was doing a bunch of stuff, but then he didn't really like it, and so he's a pilot now,
Oh.
and I'm an actor. So yeah,
So interesting. So it was actually something that was meant for you in the end, huh?
I guess. I mean, I don't know. I guess it worked out.
That's true. That's true. So Sean, one of the things I commonly ask when I talk to folks from different fields, right,
Okay.
is really about the challenges they encounter. Because when you're a young guy, usually I coach folks in college or those who are just starting their careers, right? And when you look at something that you want to do, it's usually it's usually focused on what's exciting and what's something that you look forward to. And a lot of times it's really the people who go through it that are best able to talk about the challenges.
Mhm.
So if there were what maybe your top three top of mind, what are the challenges that you have as an actor?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of different challenges. I have to tell you, I have to be honest,
Yes.
being an actor is one of the most challenging careers because uh, for many different reasons. And I
Yeah.
think for me, kind of especially as a Catholic, but I'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
One of the difficult things is that there's so much rejection. I mean, you might not realize, but I've gone on thousands of auditions, thousands.
Wow.
And being half Filipino, that's another one because you don't necessarily fit into the stereotypical what they're imagining. And so sometimes you don't fit into any particular category that they're thinking about, and so you have to be able to stand out better than other people, and and when it comes to your look, You got to be able to be what they're looking for. So of course, so those are difficulties. It's difficult for, I found difficult for me because I'm not exactly, one of these specific categories.
Yeah.
And, with writing, when you write a character, person's already had in mind what they're thinking about for that character, ethnicity, the type of actor. So, and a lot of times, when they're writing these roles, they're thinking of a specific actor they already know. And so if they can't get that actor, they're going to try to find somebody as close to that. Well, if there's not a lot of half Filipino actors out there yet, it's going to be very difficult because people aren't going to see you for that. So that's a very difficult thing as far as, and it's just something you got to accept. But so perseverance is incredibly important. And I mean, since I was 6 years old, going to thousands of auditions, and most of them are no's. Most of them are no's. You have to be able to face rejection and roll with the punches. And of course, there was some heartbreaks. I was like one person away of becoming King on Broadway. Simba, literally Simba.
Oh wow!
In when I was like 9. So I mean, like those little things are heartbreaks. I was like literally like, between me and the backup, and there's like one other kid, and there's 3 of us there, and I was the only one sent home. So those are the type of heartbreaks that you get. I was almost Simba, that close. So yeah, it's tough. That's really tough. But the other part is, as I got older, when you're younger, most of the things that you're a part of, they're pretty decent. They're not. There's nothing usually that are immoral or edgy. But as you get older, a lot of the projects will have things in it that are have content in it that are not in line with our Catholic faith, our Catholic Christian faith, and that poses a problem. So I went from being, most of the things being I'm right for, to 95% of them not being right. So at this point in time, it's really difficult. So my goals here have changed a little bit, and that's, instead of being at the mercy of the casting directors, or more, even worse, the writers and producers and directors who are creating these types of movies or this type of content, I've focused my attention on doing other things outside of just acting, like producing myself, creating stuff for myself, aligning myself with writers, and trying to write some stuff myself. I'm learning a little bit. I've written some stuff I like, but they still need to be developed. So it's a process, and I'm excited about it. But I also like doing other things. God has definitely given me some other opportunities to do speaking engagements like this, and inspire the next generation, and hopefully inspire young Catholics to stick to their faith, and tell my conversion story to the Catholic faith, which was, I've been in the church for 4 years.
Wow.
So it's been quite a journey. It feels like a 10-year journey, kind of is, but so a lot of stuff.
Right, Sean, and that's so interesting because definitely that's one of those things that I immediately, top of mind from somebody who's in Manila looking at Hollywood. My husband and I, we don't go out on dates really. We love watching movies, right? And with the shows now being very accessible, and because of lockdown, I mean, movies are one of those things that are really part of life. And so I was wondering, Sean, you kind of, well, you mentioned really finding the balance with your values, between your values and your industry, right? I'm so glad that you are one of those people who don't feel like you are beholden, and that you really are trying to, make your own path. So I really encourage you to do that, and I will definitely cheer you on and pray for you. But can you tell us about maybe plans that you have now? Because that's exciting to me too, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's it's tough. It's tough to set out away from where most of the action is. And I am thinking, well, I have been planning on, I'm going to be going back and forth, but I'm planning on spending more time in the Philippines.
Nice.
And the one thing I love about the Philippines is that when it comes to media, although I don't speak Tagalog yet,
Yes.
we'll see.
Yes.
there's still a culture that has expectations for the most part when it comes to certain content, when it comes to how a person, culturally, how there's a decorum, there's,
Yes,
you know,
yes, yeah,
so when it comes to that and creating projects, I think there's more opportunities for me as a Catholic and as a Filipino to do stuff over there, whether
yes.
it's produce or write or direct, or even act,
Mhm.
and create projects that are maybe taglish, maybe 80. Because right now I
Yeah.
think things right now it's like 20%. Well, so it's like 80% Tagalog
Mhm.
to 20% English, when you watch a Filipino movie,
Right.
at least the ones I've seen.
Mhm.
So what I'm thinking is kind of switching that, doing more
Yeah.
80% English and then 20% Tagalog.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, you have a better opportunity for distributing it to the United States.
Right. Right.
So I work with writers right now and other producers, directors to create these projects that are a little bit more flipped like that, still has the Filipino aspect to it and culture,
Mhm.
but at the same time is able to be marketed and distributed to worldwide through different platforms, whether it's Netflix or Amazon or any one of them. So yeah.
For sure. Brilliant. I think that's really brilliant. Besides, you know what? One of the things that I am also hoping to do as I coach folks, Sean, is to improve their level of English.
Okay.
And one of the things that they love doing is really watching movies, right? A lot of Filipinos learn their English not just from school, but from watching movies and shows,
Right.
right?
I mean,
So,
Tagalog. I mean, konti lang.
you know what? It starts somewhere, right? It starts somewhere. And once you start living here more, you're immersed in the language even more.
Mhm.
It'll be easier for you, for sure, right? It'll be easier for you.
I hope so.
It will be. It will be. And I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of friends who are gonna teach you. So I hope not the crazy stuff, but
Turuan mo ako mag-Tagalog.
ganon, ganon, tama yan. Practicing it, huh? Very good. So Sean, I just want to go back to the interview because now I'm going off tangent and I'm thinking of all these different ideas for you now. But so just going back, one of the things that you mentioned is really your Catholic faith and that you had a conversion. I thought that because you were, half Filipino, that you were born into the faith. I didn't realize there was a conversion story to this.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, so no, I mean, it's a long story, but I'll bullet point it. So, no, I actually grew up very anti-Catholic. I grew up in a very anti-Catholic home. My grandparents were Catholic in the Philippines, but they converted away from the faith.
Oh,
They weren't taught their faith very well, and they weren't very well
right,
catechized.
right.
Now, I do think that it's kind of an interesting thing because there's probably a conversion of the heart in some way. There,
Yeah.
the relationship with God. Unfortunately, I don't think they were really taught about putting your heart and soul into it. It's very,
Yes.
I think for them it might have been very cultural.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, but what I do know is that I grew up hearing, of course, that the most important thing is your relationship with God. Now, I think that's within the Catholic Church and within the sacraments, because within the authority of the Church, because God has given His authority to it, and it is the one true faith. But yeah, I grew up very anti-Catholic. My brother, both sides of my family were Baptist. My dad was actually became a Baptist minister for a bit, and so we grew up with a lot of anti-Catholic rhetoric. But my brother started studying the Catholic faith in college. He was very interested, and he was kind of moved and by the cathedrals that he visited when he was studying abroad in Paris, the
Right.
Notre Dame, the
Yes.
Sacre, and he was moved to kind of figure it out. Why is it? Why are they making such beautiful churches if they aren't? So there's a saying from Blessed John Henry Newman: "To be steeped in history is to cease to be Protestant."
Mm,
And when you really understand history, you understand the teachings of the church. It all comes together. Well, I thought he was crazy, and then my mom converted,
wow.
and I thought they're both.
Something's there.
I thought crazy. No, because I'm hard headed. I always joke that my grandma would always tell me that I'm hard headed. I'm very stubborn, which I
Mhm.
am. But then I think back in my head, I would joke back in my head, yeah, grandma, where did I get it from?
I know, right?
I'm just kidding. I would never do that. And yeah, but yeah, I'm always hard headed. She always tell me that. And so it took me a long time. I realized that the Catholic Church teaches that when it comes to faith and morals, that it's infallible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if it's infallible, then all I need to do is find one teaching from the church on faith and morals, de fide, disprove one of them wrong.
And it collapses.
Yeah, that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
5 years later, I couldn't find a single one. And I realized I had to become Catholic. And I was because I didn't want to become Catholic. But God does things, and I'll spare you the long story, but he does things in your life that, causes you to search. I think C.S. Lewis calls him the hound of heaven. And he allows things in our life, difficult things, often suffering, and to wake us up a little bit. C.S. Lewis said that pain is God shouts at us. Pain is a megaphone to rouse a deaf world. That's what it was.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I went through some really difficult times in my life, and but pain is often the chisel God uses to shape your soul.
That's true.
And so it caused me to search a lot, and I stumbled onto the writings of St. Pope John Paul the Great, Theology of the Body, and Love and Responsibility. And it was perfect for my moment in my life, because I went through a really, really difficult time with, I was engaged to be married, and it didn't work out. It was a big betrayal.
Right.
So it was like a spiral in my life. But in finding that there was so much in there that made sense, and it was so profound. I realized, and I was thinking to myself, how does this old pope who's never been married knows so much about life and the human soul and the human heart and love and responsibility and everything else, and it's profound and perfect. And great book, actually I'm rereading, is called Men, Women, and the Mystery of Love by Dr. Edward Sri, and it's on the writings of John Paul II's Love and Responsibility. I highly recommend it to anybody who wants to learn about relationships and Men, Women, and the Mystery of Love.
Yes.
It's excellent. It explains a lot why our culture is really suffering, whether it's here or even in the Philippines. I'm sure this as well. Because people don't know who they are, and they don't know what they're meant for, and they think love is a feeling, or they think love, there's no such thing as love. There's a lot of different mindsets out there, but when it comes down to it, the church has the answers. Now, unfortunately, the church has not done a very bad job of teaching that, and I can see that in my grandparents' lives. They taught the faith very well, and I think that's been the reoccurring theme within the church, especially since they're not taught really what the church teaches as should have in the past 60, 70 years. There's a lot of reasons for that, but anyway, so I realized I had to become Catholic, and it was great. Once I really looked at it, it was kind of like walking, it's like someone saying, oh, you should become Catholic. I'm like, Catholic? That's ridiculous. But I liken it to like someone saying, well, becoming Catholic it's like, my analogy I always use is someone says that there's a whole world in this wardrobe. And you're like, really, in the closet over there? And you walk, oh yeah, sure, there's a whole world in here. And you open it up, it's like there's a tree, there's a mountain, there's a sky, and you walk into Narnia. It's kind of like that. You don't realize that this equated thing actually has something. It's like a whole, there's way more to it than we can ever imagine. So if you think the Catholic faith is just this cultural, antiquated thing that's out of touch, and it's way behind the times, no, it's much greater and deeper, and so it's like that, walking into a wardrobe and realizing, oh, this is different. This is way more profound and beautiful than I could ever have imagined.
Right.
So
Wonderful testimony, Sean. Wonderful testimony, because I didn't expect hearing that going into an interview with an actor.
Well, I'm full of surprise.
I love it. Just the kind of guests I love. But so just to continue, Sean, I mean, one of the things that I think is really interesting, just relating your career and faith, right? And your faith. It's really how much noise we're getting from the environment, right? So much distraction, so much noise. And when you have that, there is very little time for prayer, very little time for really understanding who you are, and all those things that go into soul searching and self reflection, right? One of the things as a life coach, you will hear, people always say self care, but self care falls short when you don't have a good foundation to self care. So I'm really glad that you talked about the faith a little bit more because of that.
Yeah.
Sean, if you had, advices and tips perhaps to give others who are interested into going into this career of yours,
Mm.
whether or not they're, faith based or whatever, but I'll leave it up to you, right? What is the practical advice that you can give? And what are some of the maybe wiser things that you can also share?
On the practical one, well, I guess it kind of depends on. Okay, well, trying to think of like a few different practical things I can give.
Sure.
Number one, if you're going to be an actor, you have to have training. You have to know how to act. You have to find a good coach,
Right.
because there really isn't. It's a skill,
Yeah.
and you may like performing, but there's certain aspects of it that are very important, that make it much easier and help you in on set,
Right.
in a casting office, to really perform and do what you need to do as an actor. There's different protocols, and it's kind of like if you were a basketball player. You
Right.
have to practice, you have to be in shape, you have to um, you you have to put the time and effort in,
Right.
so and you have to get the equipment. You have to have a ball, you have to have basketball shoes so
Right.
you don't roll your ankle.
Right.
And in acting, you're going to need certain practical things. You're going to need photos, and you're going to need to probably get yourself a camera to film yourself, if
Right.
you have to do online tapings,
Yeah.
and send them in.
Mm.
And also it's good to watch yourself and analyze your performance, like, and be honest, like, would I
Mm-hmm.
want to see me on screen?
Yeah.
Not just I want to be on screen, but
Yes.
myself, would I cast me?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot that goes into that. So practical things. You have to have an agent or a manager or some way to submit yourself.
Right.
It's difficult to do all the self submissions, but finding a good manager, finding a good agent is going to be
Right.
tough, especially
Right.
if you have 0 credits.
Right.
So I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not one of these hobbies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's going to be very difficult. If you want to, if you really love it, and you really want to be a part of it, that's great.
Yeah.
But it's going to take a lot of work and
Right.
a lot of dedication.
Right.
It's one of the most
Grueling, huh? Yeah.
yeah, grueling careers. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I literally left my own birthday party to go to an audition
Wow.
at a park with all my cousins and friends, and I got a call and I got an audition. I said, all right, everybody, see you later. I left my own birthday party and went to an audition, which I didn't. So there's a lot of sacrifices. It takes a lot of sacrifice. Now, is it rewarding? It can be. It can be very rewarding. Being on set, on a good film is a lot of fun, especially here in a SAG-AFTRA film, union film. Some of these movies that I've been a part of have been just it's great. It's there's something about it that just really alluring, and being a part of something bigger than yourself, and,
Yes.
and it's awesome. It really is.
Right.
But at the same time, for me, what I realized is that as awesome as that is, I never want to compromise my faith, because like I said, 95% of the projects I hear really hard to be. You can't really justify it as a Catholic. You can't cooperate with evil, and it's tough. I've had to make a lot of sacrifices and say a lot of no's and
Yeah.
do other things with my life.
Yeah.
But it's worth it, because at the end of the day, I have to be able to look myself in the mirror
Yes.
And also I love, if you have to pick and choose, you have to pick and choose.
Yeah.
Do you want to, do you say, Lord, I'm going to do it my way, or you're going to say, no, Lord, my will be done, or you're going to say, Lord, thy will be done.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, you have to make the decision. I was just reading a verse in the Old Testament from Joshua, and he says, choose you this day whom you will serve. But for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And so we have to make the decision every single day with all of our decisions. But I realized this, that there's a quote from Mother Teresa. She said, God didn't put us in this earth to be successful. He put me on this earth to be faithful. And that's really is the only way to be successful. We should be successful. We should strive for our best, but it cannot come at the expense of our soul. What does Jesus say? What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? So it's ridiculous to do that, and if I'm really going to stand in front of, one of the things I've really learned to love is grown to love, or I don't know, fall in love with is these speaking engagements I get to do for youth.
Yeah.
How am I going to stand there in front of 400, 1,000
Yeah.
students and tell them, yeah, you guys should, follow God with all your heart, but I'm not doing the same. So,
Right.
I mean, that's part of it too. But I mean, that's just like a secondary thing. I have to stand before God at the end of time, and I have to say to him, yeah, I chose my career and fame and money and power, for a few years instead of you. Well, no, that's ridiculous, because if you read St. Augustine, you listen to him, said one of the most profound things ever. For thou, O Lord, hast made us for thyself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee.
Yeah.
So all these different things that we run to, and I know I run to them all the time, things that distract us, or things that we want, or, even sin.
Yeah.
What does all the saints say? That what are we really running after? Well, it's not that thing, because that thing never really fulfills. What is it really? What is it we really want? Well, deep down in our hearts, it's God. Why? Because we're made in the image of God, and we're made for love. And who is God? God is love. Well, he's ultimate love. He's the greatest love. And we were made for him. So if we are apart from him, no wonder our hearts are restless.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you look at the saints, you look at a lot of the saints and stuff, and I'm no saint. I'm a sinner. I'm trying. I try every day. And, but I know the days that I fail and I think about it, I'm miserable. I'm always miserable whenever I sin. I'm miserable whenever I fail. But when am I truly most deeply fulfilled and happy? When I really give my all to God. That's when it is, because that's what we're made for. We're made for love. And every sin is really the lack of love. It's really the lack of love. You think about it, it's selfishness. And it's not fulfilling. Why? Because even on the sense, if you're being selfish, like if we talk about psychology, the bottom level is your Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
You just get things. What are you getting? You're getting dopamine hit. So you get money, you get a paycheck, you get food, water, take alcohol, whatever it is. What your body is really telling you is there, keep doing this because dopamine is being released. It's a survival mechanism. But we weren't made to just survive. So that's why if you move up the ladder of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what do we need? Real connection. Life isn't worth living unless it's lived for others. So Mother Teresa said, so we were made for relationship. Well, what's the greatest relationship? Well, we have our family, we have our friends, if you have a spouse, and then who's at the top? God. Why God? Because he's the only one, and this is what our hearts long for. We long to be completely known and completely loved. And God is the only one who can fill that, because he's the only one who can see everything about us. And so that total acceptance, at the same time, he loves us for everything that we are. He also loves us so much he doesn't want us to stay where we are. And so that's why he calls us to be holy, because he knows that that's what's going to make us the most happy. And so if we aren't being holy, we can't be happy. We can't be truly blessed. And so what does it say in scripture? Blessed are those who are pure in heart, for they shall see God. And that is when we're going to be truly, totally, completely happy, because we're made for that. We're made to be face to face with God, but we have to be perfected. So sometimes there's sufferings in life, and it's only trial by fire that really brings us closer. So the point is that we were made for God. He's the one who knows us completely, so we can be accepted completely, and he loves us totally. And we see that with Christ on the cross. We know that he loves us.
Yeah.
We know that God loves us. He is love.
Yeah.
And that's why when we are truly in communion with him, even if there isn't that mental stimulus,
Yeah.
when you truly give your heart to him, your heart grows for him. Now, sometimes those feelings will fade.
Yeah.
That's okay. If you look at Mother Teresa's feelings faded.
Yes.
She didn't feel the presence of God for like 50 years.
Yes.
So you're going to say, well, where was God? He was there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, love is not a feeling.
Yeah.
Catechism 1766, love is to will the good of another.
Yeah.
It's action, it's choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's actually interesting because it's when you least feel like loving, putting in the action, that is that moment
Yeah.
when your love is tested.
That's right. You
And,
decide.
and so if you look at like all of life and culture, the reason why things are failing and falling apart is because we've lost the definition of love. We don't know who God is, therefore we don't know who we are, and we don't know what love is, so we don't know what we're made for.
Yeah.
The Catholic faith teaches us, it shows us who we are. John Paul II said this, that God in becoming man reveals our identity to ourselves. It shows us who we are meant to be. And so Christ becomes the ultimate picture of our identity. And it's only in that do we know who we are and that we're truly fulfilled and happy.
Awesome, Sean. Awesome. I want to end there. I can't even. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And I cannot wait to air this. That's exactly what a lot of people need to hear. And you know what, Sean, as you were talking, a part of me was saying, this is why this guy's an actor. You have such a great memory. You can probably memorize pages and pages of scripts. And just
I mean, I've done pretty okay.
No, really. And you know how, what do we say, right? God plans your life even better than you can plan it yourself.
Oh yeah. Funny story about that. You probably wouldn't believe it from this conversation, but I used to be terrified of interviews. I used to be terrified of public speaking.
Okay.
I was so scared. I would say the weirdest things. I was so nervous. I did this movie though. There was this movie I did called To Save a Life, and it was actually it was made by Christians. It was actually before I became Catholic, and the message of it was about teen bullying, suicide, teen pregnancy. It was a lot of really important issues, but from a Christian perspective.
Yes.
Very impactful. We didn't have any. I never realized how much of an impact it would have. But after we were done filming it, we were asked to give a lot of speaking, talks to speaking.
Marketing, yeah.
I don't know how to do this. Like, because the thing is, as an actor, when you're in front of a camera and you mess up and you forget all your lines, what do they say?
Cut.
Take two. So if you mess up, there's always take two. So being on set in front of a camera, not really that nervous. But being in front of people, there's never any take two.
Right.
You say is what it is. But I remember I was up in Oregon and I was reading off this paper. I was giving a talk, reading off this paper about bullying. And as I get near to the bottom, at the bottom of it, I know I'm supposed to say something from the heart. So I'm getting more nervous and more nervous. And I get to the bottom and I look up, 400 high school students staring at me.
Oh my gosh. How old were you?
Was I 20? I don't remember now. Okay. 19 was when I was filming it. So I think I was like 20 or
20. Okay.
Yeah, I think like 20. And I can't remember anymore. But anyway, it's a long time ago, galaxy far, far away. No, in Oregon. And so I look up, 400 high school students staring at me. And previously when I got to that moment, I would be so nervous. I'd be like, and so now I think Randy wants to say something.
Pass the mic.
Save me, sort of thing. I looked up though, and this time, all of a sudden, in one moment, all my fear went away.
Wow.
And
Grace.
it was seriously grace. It was grace. It was a miracle moment.
Yeah.
All the fear went away, and I realized in that moment that all my fear went away. I realized I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to be perfectly articulate. See, I'm not even being perfectly articulate right now. I need to be perfectly profound. All I need to do is tell them the truth.
Yeah.
I saw this quote recently, and it was, you never have to remember anything. Oh, wait, sorry. You don't have to remember anything if you just tell the truth.
Nice.
And I realized in the moment, all I need to tell them is the truth.
Yeah.
And that is that, number one, they're loved,
Yeah.
cared about. Number two, there's a purpose for them. God has something for them.
Yeah.
Number three, they're never alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what we want to hear as human beings, that we're loved, we're cared about, we have a purpose. God has a purpose for us.
Yeah.
And we're not alone. And these are the things that God tells us. He loves us.
Yeah.
We know this. He has a purpose for us. Romans 8:28. All things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose.
Amen.
And Romans 8:29, basically for the purpose of conforming us to the image of Christ.
Yeah.
So even the most difficult things, even the toughest things in our life, I look at the toughest things in my life, the most painful memories I have, they're the ones that have shaped me the most. Now, they weren't shaping me at the time, but eventually it worked out. God can retroactively take all the stuff, bad things in your life, and use them for good.
Yeah.
And of course they're painful. And of course there's scars. And of course, it's not until the end of time that God wipes away all tears.
Mm-hmm.
So those things will be with us sometimes and will stick around with us.
Yeah.
But if we submit ourselves to the will of God, he will use it 100%. I've seen that in every step of my life. My parents divorced when I was 19, and that was a huge blow for me.
Oh.
But just as I was, that was happening, I booked that movie to save a life.
Oh.
And so the character that I played was actually very depressed and very sad and very lonely.
Right.
And so one of the things I get to talk about now is, even though my parents divorcing was terrible, awful, and hurtful and horrible,
Yeah.
and angry, like, God, why did you allow this to happen?
Yeah.
From it, I get to tell them, look, in that moment, I learned something about pain, and I was actually able to relate with that character in a way that I never would have.
Yeah.
Now, that's not, oh, okay, good, I'm so glad my parents divorced, but what is the thing? The thing is that there is hope even in the midst of, brokenness. Christ died. The worst thing, the most atrocity in the world brought about the greatest salvation of the world. The worst atrocity brought about the salvation of the world. So if we look at the worst things in our life, when you submit them to God, they can become the greatest catalyst for sanctification of yourself, and that God can use those things for other people. But basically, here's the thing. If by Christ's stripes we are healed, and if we're made in the image of God and we are part of his body, then by our stripes, I think other people can be healed too. We become the hands and feet of Christ, bringing the good news to them and showing what God has done in our life. So a lot of times our wounds are poured out for others, and can be poured out for others. There's a couple of things I learned from my parents' divorce. What I learned, why did you allow this to happen? Well, what did I learn? Because I thought, well, you can do anything. You're all powerful. And it's true. He's all powerful. So why didn't he? Because he respects free will. Free will. Why is that important? Because free will is the only way for true love to exist, because true love is a choice. So God respects that so much because he wants us to have the ability to love. And love is more important than making robots. Without free will, we're robots. Without free will, we cannot love. And so I learned something in and through that's more important. So if we look at that, we look at this, yes, there's a lot of destruction in our lives, but can God use them? Absolutely. Is there a lot of times when people aren't loving towards us? Yes, but can God use that? Yeah. So all these different things work together for good.
Yeah.
And those things actually helped me later on when I went through even more difficult things.
Yeah.
So I look at all of that. Here, Peter Crave talks about this. I recommend him if you like C.S. Lewis or if you love great speakers.
Yes.
And he's also a convert, and he was a big influence on my conversion. But he talks about how, oftentimes we fear suffering, and then
Right.
fear death, and we fear, uh, suffering, death, and then the last one is sin.
Failure? Sin?
Sin.
Okay.
But we should really fear it in the other way around. We really should fear sin the most,
Yeah.
and death, and then suffering. Even though suffering is bad, suffering is actually often used by God, and we know this. We
Yeah.
know, like I said, pain is often the chisel God uses to shape our soul. So we shouldn't be afraid of difficult things, because they are the things that, look at anybody's life. Even if you're a kid,
Yeah.
you have to go to school. You have to learn how to potty train. Like, it's not fun for a kid to like stop playing and then go learn how to potty train or do these are fun. But can you imagine if we never learned how to do these things? If we,
Yeah. Basic, right?
example maybe. But my point is, like, suffering is actually how you learn and grow. So obviously some suffering is really tough,
Yeah.
but in the grand scheme of what God does,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing, because if this was everything, in our world,
Yeah.
we'd be thinking, why is my life this? Why is my existence this? And I think that's why people lose hope and
Yeah.
unfortunately commit suicide and stuff, is
Yeah.
because they don't understand that we're looking at the backside of the tapestry.
Right. Right.
That we're that one little dot right there, and you're thinking, what am I even doing here? But God has a grand master plan.
Right.
And we're unfortunately at the back of this tapestry thinking, God, why are you allowing this to happen in my life?
Right.
So yeah, it's hard sometimes to have hope in those situations, and I'm very sympathetic,
Yeah.
But if we can remember that God is ultimately in control and heaven awaits us,
Yeah.
there's a hope in that. And
For sure.
Viktor Frankl, who was in Auschwitz, in the concentration camps in World War II, he said, a man can endure almost any suffering if he has reason, meaning, purpose. And this is ultimate purpose. God gives us that ultimate purpose.
Yeah.
Suffering, as Catholics, we know that as we can offer up our suffering.
Yeah.
And I remember John Paul II used to go to people who are suffering and ask them, could you please pray? Would you please offer your suffering for me, for the church?
Yeah.
As Catholics, I mean, even for me, it's so hard for me when I'm suffering, going through things in the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why, God?
I know, for sure.
Why? It's so hard to offer that suffering. It's so hard to actually endure it and bear it with grace.
Mhm.
But we got to try.
Yep, for
But-
sure. For sure. And when we try and we try together as a family under God, it just is better, no?
I agree. I agree.
I love it. You know what, Sean? This interview has given me so much more than I had ever expected. And I really, really sincerely appreciate all the sharing that you've done. I
Sure.
cannot wait for you to talk to more kids because they need it. In the Philippines, I am sure you're going to have a lot of opportunities. And I am looking forward to, maybe introducing you to a few people so that we can get you in front of them.
Hey, the more the merrier. I love it. I can do this all day. So
That's right.
yeah.
I can feel it. I can tell. I can tell. And the thing is, you have the skills to make it not just interesting, but really it charismatic. I mean, it's
Well, it's a gift from God.
it
I
is.
I know this because I told you my story. I would literally get so nervous. I would, after like 2 minutes, I would just hand the mic. Honestly, I was terrified. But this is the thing that God does.
Yeah.
He sometimes uses the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. He took the frightened, half Filipino kid, and I don't know. So all glory to God. It's him, not
All
me.
glory to God. All glory to God. Well, As we wrap up this interview, Sean, because before I forget about the time, as we wrap up this interview, I don't have any more questions for you. Maybe you should start writing books, Sean. Maybe you should start writing some.
Yeah, actually, I'm trying to slow going, but eventually, for sure.
Right, right.
My
Yeah.
testimony, and a few different things. I think I want to write a book on like dating and whatnot because
Yes.
modern relationships are a very interesting one. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, I'll be very interested to hear about that. And once you have it up and running, let's do another call, huh?
yeah. Oh yeah, I got to get that going. So
I think you should. There's always a reason for everything, right? And that heartache, maybe. Who knows? No?
yeah, I mean that's part of it. That's part of it. Definitely be part of the story, my
Yeah.
own story.
Yeah.
But definitely will go into why I think a lot of yeah, like I said, a lot of relationships failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why I think my parents,
Yeah.
and different people
Yeah.
these days the divorce rate is so high.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's an interesting thing, and
Hmm.
I know we're running this long, but
Please.
we'll give this one thing. The Catholic Church teaches that contraception
Hmm.
is wrong.
Hmm.
It's evil.
Hmm.
And so if you look at the divorce rate of people, who use contraception
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you look at the people who don't,
Yeah.
what is the divorce rate?
Yeah.
Divorce rate is normal for across the board, if you're using contraception. But there was a study of people, 1,400 couples who did
Mm.
not use artificial contraception.
Mm-hmm.
They only practiced natural family planning,
Yeah.
and their divorce rate was maybe 2% or less.
Wow. Yeah.
There was a study of 1,400 couples, and there
Yeah.
was zero divorces. But I think overall,
Yeah.
zero out of 1,400
Wow.
overall of across the world, people
Yeah.
who practice it, it's like 2% or less.
Right.
So the church really is there is a divine wisdom within the church and what it
Yeah.
teaches.
Yeah. The purity of love.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
mean you guys can look into that why that really works. I do recommend Men, Women, and the Mystery of Love by Dr. Edward Sri.
Yeah.
I'm reading another one by Patrick Coffin. I can't remember the name of it now.
Sure.
There's some excellent resources out there. You can trust the church. And if you have a difficult time with believing the church on some of these more difficult topics,
Yeah.
whether it's abortion or whether it's contraception,
Yeah.
do the research because
Yes.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. And media, local media, international media is not research, right? A lot of people say they do the research and they
Yeah.
look at the headline. That is not research.
No,
It's
it's
not.
not.
Yeah.
There's so much fake news and manipulation
Yes.
out there these
Yes.
days, and it's global.
Yeah.
It's here in the states. There is so much pushback because of certain ideologies
Yeah.
and certain agendas
Yeah.
that mainstream media has.
Yeah.
That if you do not do the honest research and you
Yeah.
put aside your own ego and your
Yeah.
own
Biases. Yeah.
biases and you look at things objectively, you will not find it. You will not find the truth. I always say this: fall in love with truth,
Yeah.
and you'll never have a problem being wrong. Because if you find that at that moment you're wrong, it's just you finding more truth. And you have to accept truth no matter what, even no matter what the cost is. Truth must be the thing that we ultimately seek. What does Jesus say? Seek and you shall find. And who is he ultimately? He says, I am the way, the
True.
truth, and the life.
Life.
So seek the truth. Because I heard this nice quote, and I think it's theologically correct, but all truth is God's truth ultimately. So seek the truth.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. So, Sean, we have heard so much from you, from advices on acting, from, really being very honest with us about heartache and all that, but really ultimately about the truth and the beauty and the wonderful life that you seek, not just temporal, but really spiritual. And my gosh, Sean, I can't thank you enough for the time that you've given us today. I really hope I get to talk to you again one day with
Yeah.
the book out, some project out when you're in Manila, something.
Yeah. My next project, whenever it gets released, sure.
That's right. That's right. I'm looking forward to that. And again, my prayers for you and everything that you do. God bless you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank
God,
you.
thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on this show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, guys, you've heard it from Sean Michael Afable. Look out for him as he goes into the Philippines and explores a lot of what our country can offer. Take care, everyone. I'll see you again next time, okay? Take care, Sean.
All right.
Bye.